Imagine stumbling upon a hidden cluster of ramshackle huts deep in the heart of the Adirondack Mountains, where the wind whispers through towering pines and the only sounds are the rush of a cold river and the occasional crack of a branch underfoot. And there, emerging from what looks like a massive pile of logs stacked haphazardly like a forgotten woodpile, is a small, wiry man with a wild beard and piercing eyes. Greeting you as the mayor of Cold River City, population 1. And you couldn't help but wonder what kind of soul would choose to vanish into this unforgiving wilderness for over 3 decades. Cutting ties with the modern world just as the Great Depression was tightening its grip on society, leaving behind jobs, family, and the comforts of civilization to survive on his wits alone. Facing blizzards that could bury a man alive and summers swarming with black flies that drive even the hardiest hikers mad. All because he declared he was not well satisfied with the world and its trends. A shocking decision that turned him into a living legend, the Hermit of Cold River, whose story of self-imposed exile shocks us, even today, because it forces us to ask ourselves if we've ever felt that same pull to just walk away from it all. This is the real tale of Noah John Rondeau, born on July 6, 1883, in the rugged town of Osable Forks, New York, a place nestled in the shadow of the Adirondacks, where life was tough for a boy growing up in a large family. And from the start, Noah's childhood was marred by hardship, with an abusive father who made home feel more like a prison than a sanctuary. So by his teenage years, around the turn of the century, young Noah did what many dream of but few dare. He ran away, fleeing into the vast forests that surrounded his hometown, learning to fend for himself by hunting, fishing, and trapping, skills that would become his lifeline in the years to come. And as he wandered, he picked up odd jobs here and there, working as a farmhand or a laborer, but always feeling that restless itch, that dissatisfaction with the noise and demands of society, which back then was rapidly changing with factories booming and cities growing. Yet for Noah, it all felt suffocating, like the world was moving too fast, towards something hollow. By his early 20s, around 1902, Noah made his first foray into the remote Cold River area, a wild stretch about 17 miles from the nearest settlement. Drawn there initially for the prime hunting and trapping grounds where deer roamed freely and beaver pelts could fetch a decent price, and over the next couple of decades, he returned seasonally, building crude shelters from fallen logs and branches, stacking them in ways that blended seamlessly with the forest, almost like giant woodpiles to camouflage his presence. And during these trips, he honed his survival skills, learning to read the weather by the shift in the winds, to forage for berries and roots when game was scarce, and to endure the bone-chilling winters where temperatures plummeted below zero. Wrapping himself in furs and huddling by a small fire that he kept alive with, would he de-chopped himself? All while the rest of America was buzzing with inventions like the automobile and the airplane. But Noah wanted none of it, preferring the solitude where he could think his own thoughts without interruption. Then, in 1929, at the age of 46, just as the stock market crashed and plunged the nation into economic despair, Noah made his boldest move. Yet he decided to stay in the wilderness, year own, packing up his few belongings, including a violin he'd played to chase away the loneliness, and trekking deep into the High Peaks region to establish his permanent hermitage along the Cold River, a spot so isolated that it took days of hiking through dense underbrush and over rocky terrain to reach thence. And there he built what he called Cold River City, a collection of tiny cabins pieced together from salvaged lumber and natural materials, one serving as his sleeping quarters, another as a storage shed, and he even erected a sign proclaiming his mayoral status, a quirky touch that hinted at the humor beneath his reclusive exterior. And as he settled in, he must have felt a profound sense of freedom. Free from bosses, bills, and the societal pressures that weighed on everyone else during those turbulent times. But as the years stretched on in that remote woodpile haven, whispers began to spread about this mysterious figure living off the grid, drawing curious hikers and adventurers who sought him out. And what they found was a man who, despite his isolation, welcomed them with stories and songs, yet always on his terms, leaving many to ponder what secrets he guarded in his coded journals, and why he truly chose this path of extreme solitude. What challenges did he face in those early years that tested his resolve? And how did he turn a pile of logs into a self-sustaining world? As Noah John Rondeau deepened his roots in Cold River City, his daily life became a rhythmic dance with nature's unforgiving elements, starting each morning with the crack of dawn filtering through the chinks in his log walls, where he'd rise from his simple bed of blankets and furs, stoke the embers of his fire to boil water from the river, for a humble breakfast of oatmeal or whatever he deforaged the day before, like wild mushrooms or fish caught with handmade lines. And then he'd set out on his rounds, chopping wood with an axe that he sharpened meticulously, checking his traps for rabbits or beaver that provided both meat and pelts to trade on rare trips to town. And all the while, he navigated the seasons with a wisdom born from experience. Knowing that summer brought bountiful gardens, he tended with potatoes and beans planted in small clearings, but also relentless insects that bit through his clothes, forcing him to smear mud on his skin for protection. And winters were even harsher, with snowdrifts piling up to his waist, isolating him further as he hunkered down in his woodpile-like huts, rationing food stores and burning logs sparingly to conserve heat, sometimes enduring weeks without seeing another soul. Yet he thrived on this self-reliance, writing in his journals, often in a secret code of symbols and pictographs he de-invented to keep his thoughts private about the beauty of the stars unpolluted by city lights, or the thrill of spotting a moose grazing nearby. Reflections that revealed a poetic side to this rugged hermit who, despite his small stature of just 5 feet 2 inches, possessed a giant spirit that refused to bend to modern conveniences like electricity or running water, which he viewed as unnecessary crutches that dulled the human instinct for survival. Interestingly, though he sought escape from society, Noah wasn't entirely antisocial. Word of his existence spread through the Adirondack hiking community, and adventurous souls would make the arduous journey to his hermitage, often arriving, exhausted and awed, only to be greeted by Noah with a twinkle in his eye and an invitation to sit by the fire, where he'd pull out his violin and play lively tunes that echoed through the valley, sharing tales of his exploits like the time he outsmarted a bear, raiding his supplies, or survived a brutal storm that uprooted trees around him. And these visitors, ranging from fellow outdoorsmen to journalists curious about this anomaly in a world increasingly connected by radios and telephones, brought him small gifts like books or tobacco, which he appreciated but never depended on, always maintaining his independence by trading furs for essentials during his infrequent ventures out, perhaps once or twice a year, to Corey's or Saranac Lake, where he'd stock up on flour, salt, and ammunition before vanishing back into the woods. And over time, his legend grew. Where this wilderness dweller, dressed in his tattered clothes, proving that even a hermit could shine in the spotlight when he chose to. Yet he always returned to his solitude, content with the company of birds and the river's murmur. Through the 1930s and 1940s, as the world outside convulsed with the Great Depression, World War II, and the dawn of the atomic age, Noah remained blissfully detached, his life a testament to minimalism long before it became a trend, sustaining himself on what the land provided, mending his own clothes with needles fashioned from bones, and even practicing basic medicine with herbal remedies he'd learned from Native American influences in the region. But this idyllic isolation was without its perils. He faced health scares, like infections from cuts that could turn deadly without doctors nearby, and the constant threat of forest fires or floods that could wipe out his hard-built home in an instant. Yet he persevered, his resilience inspiring those who heard of him, turning him into a symbol of rugged individualism in an era when conformity was king. But as the 1950s approached, forces beyond his control began to brew. From changing conservation laws that restricted trapping to a natural disaster lurking on the horizon. In the fall of 1950, as Noah John Rondeau approached his 67th birthday, the skies over the Adirondacks darkened with an ominous fury that would forever alter his solitary kingdom. When, on November 25th, a massive hurricane unusual for the region but packing winds over 100 miles per hour barreled through the mountains, uprooting ancient trees like matchsticks, flooding rivers to bursting points, and unleashing chaos that destroyed trails, bridges, and entire swaths of forest. And in the heart of it all, Cold River City bore the brunt, with Noah's carefully constructed huts crumbling under the assault of falling timber and relentless rain, his woodpile shelters scattering like debris in the gale, forcing him to huddle in what remained as the storm raged for hours. And when the winds finally subsided, he emerged to find his home in ruins, supplies ruined by water, and the landscape so transformed that survival there became impossible. A heartbreaking end to 21 years of year-round isolation, though his connection to the area stretched back over 3 decades since his first trips in the early 1990s, marking the close of an A chapter where he defied the odds, living off the grid in a way that modern survivalists can only envy. And with heavy heart, Noah gathered what he could salvage and made the long trek out, leaving behind the only place that had ever truly felt like home. Transitioning back to civilization wasn't easy for a man who'd spent so long apart from it. He first settled on a farm near Osable Forks, trying to adjust to the hum of everyday life with its cars zipping by and people everywhere. But the pull of the spotlight lingered, and soon he found a quirky new role at Santa's workshop in Wilmington, a theme park where, with his authentic white beard and twinkling eyes, he played Santa Claus himself, delighting children with stories from his hermit days, and even setting up a replica of his Cold River hut to showcase his past. A gig that lasted a few seasons and brought him a measure of fame and income, allowing him to connect with the world on his terms once more, and later he moved to Wilmington proper, living modestly until his health declined in the 1960s, leading to his passing on August 24, 1967, at a hospital in Lake Placid, at the age of 84, but even in death, his legacy endured, with his coded journals preserved and later deciphered, revealing profound insights into his philosophy of simplicity and harmony with nature. Inspiring books like Maitland C. DeSormo's biography and articles in magazines that celebrated him as the quintessential Adirondack hermit, a man who proved that one could escape society's grasp and find fulfillment in solitude, influencing generations of hikers who now trek to the site of Cold River City, marked by a historical plaque to reflect on his life amid the regrown forest. Today, in our hyper-connected world of smartphones and social media, Noah's story resonates more than ever, reminding us of the value in unplugging, in facing the wild to find inner peace, and perhaps challenging us to question our own dependencies on modern comforts. As his choice to live in that woodpile for 33 years was just survivalist, was a deliberate act of rebellion against a world he saw as flawed, leaving a timeless message about resilience, independence, and the quiet power of nature. If this tale of the Hermit of Cold River has hooked you like it did me, hit that like button. Subscribe for more real history stories that bring the past alive. And drop a comment below, sharing if you'd ever considered ditching it all for the woodsled. Keep the conversation going.